The WPMA approached me about a year ago and asked me to develop a suite of design guides, 10 design guides. And I jumped at the opportunity. For me, it was really an opportunity to give back to the industry, to develop something that was pretty special and lead this technical development for the industry. Initially, the scope was for 10 design guides, and following various industry meetings and also a scoping session, we're looking to increase that scope to 54 design guides. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The title of my presentation is The Time for Timber, and I've chosen that title specifically because when I started in this industry roughly a decade and a half ago, the only photos I had was of residential buildings and a few portal frames built out of LVL. And now I really get the opportunity to talk about all sorts of buildings and present all sorts of buildings. So tonight I've just chosen 4 buildings. One is the Houtte Valley Health Hub, in Wellington, the Mount Pleasant Community Centre, which is Chris Muller's design, the Kaikoura District Council building that survived the Kaikoura District earthquakes unscathed. Granted, there was no real live loading in that building at the time, but it also served as the Civil Defence Headquarters, which was a real testament to the design and also the applicability of timber in that situation. And I've also put in a photo there of 281 Queen Street, so that's in Richmond, Nelson, which is my hometown. And if you're ever in Richmond, by all means have a look at that building. It was a very successful and commercial project. I'm going to start with acknowledgements. These are the partners of the project, the WPMA, obviously, Forest Growers Levy Trust, the EWPAA, Engineered Wood Processors Association of Australasia, the New Zealand Timber Design Society, and WR Jacks, equipment suppliers. These guys are funders at this point in time of the design guides. And supporters, well, this is really a trans-industry project. We cover everything from the forestry through manufacturers, fabricators, suppliers and professional services. And as this project gathers momentum, more and more people come on board. And so I'm actually starting to run out of room on this slide for all the supporters' logos, and I'll shortly be adding another slide. I mean, I believe at the end of this project we'll touch roughly 90% of all the specifiers in the country. We'll also engage with construction companies. Obviously, the timber manufacturers and fabricators are on board, providing input, and as well as that, the forestry industry is heavily engaged as well. So it's truly a trans-industry project, and it really is a feel-good project for the whole supply chain. I've got a couple of slides of graphs, and I'll put these in here for one reason, and that's to show the size of the prize. How big is our industry, and where are we going? So this is the residential market in New Zealand, of which we own, the timber industry owns or supplies around about 95–96%. Interesting enough, this is forecast to grow. A year ago, our forecast was that this was going to actually plateau, but now it's going to grow. And by 2023, we actually forecast this to reach 43,000 consents every year, and it's mainly driven by residential growth. And a lot of that's due to KiwiBuild initiative that's come up. It's interesting though that multi-unit consents is going to increase from 32 to 38%. And as well as that, we have to bear in mind as a timber industry that there is less timber in multi-unit construction than there is in detached dwellings. So it's actually a challenge to our industry to maintain our percentages as our industry grows. And very interesting is that Auckland will develop from 51% of multi-unit dwellings to be forecast to be 60% by 2023. For non-residential buildings, which is really a growth target market for the timber industry, it's forecast at the moment to stay pretty stable at around about $7 to $8 billion a year, of which timber represents about 17%. Interesting enough, after the Christchurch earthquakes, concrete took a very big hit and steel gained a lot of market share. Timber has fluctuated between 10 and 20% for the last 10 years. So we've got a great opportunity here to grow our market in non-residential construction. Most of the growth or the buildings being built are commercial privately owned commercial buildings, but also education and health buildings are where the major construction projects are going to be. And I've put together a bit of a snapshot, a spreadsheet of what I believe this market is worth to our industry. So if we take non-residential building value at $7 billion a year, and we say that 70% of them are going to be built and the main structure is timber, that gives a value of about $1.2 billion, of which the value of that timber in the building, let's say it's 15%. That's $180 million, our current value to our industry is. Now, if I just take one figure, and that's the percentage of non-residential timber buildings, and increase that by 3%, the total value to our industry increases by about $30 million. So for every 1% increase in building, timber being the main building material and non-residential timber buildings, we add about $10 million to our industry bottom line. Now, hypothetically thinking, if we can grow that market share to roughly a third, so we share that as a hybrid building material, and we increase the value of, or the percentage of timber products within that building, by these numbers, we can increase that market share or market value by 3 times, hypothetically thinking. So moving on, we've got technology. So we've got CNC machinery. Thanks, Grant, for the photo. We've got fire technology. We understand the fire performance of timber. We've got access to screws and connection technology from Europe and overseas. We're also developing our own here in New Zealand. We've got acoustical detailing. We've got energy dissipation devices being developed by companies like Tectonis. We've got connection systems being developed. We've also got the timber products. We've got traditional timber products, sawn timber, glulam are the traditional products. Then we've got peeled products such as ply and LVL. And we've also got access to OSB and LSL, strand products coming into the market, and new products like CLT being introduced. And all of this gets combined by design. This is where the magic happens. However, evolution is necessary. So you can see on the left-hand side, we've got the old 3603, and I was told today that the new 3603 is due to be released in October. Fingers crossed. We hope that that comes out. We've also got Andy Buchanan's Timber Design Guide, which is marketed by TIF, the Timber Industry Federation. And look, that's been updated, and I think it was last updated in 2003. We've also got access to the IP from Wood Solutions, so looking across the Tasman and seeing what those guys are doing. They're doing a great job at developing technical guidance for their industry. Now, we've got access to that IP to bring into our country, so we're not going to reinvent the wheel here. What we're going to do is take their IP and convert it into New Zealand language. And on the right-hand side is a mock-up of what our design guide series is going to look like, a cover page. So I've included in here a life cycle of timber products. It's a traditional life cycle graph, and this was developed in the United States about 25 years ago. And I think it's actually pretty applicable for where our products are in our market at the moment. You'll note framing timber is in a maturity, sort of declining sort of a state. Glulam is mature. LVL is in rapid growth. Structurally insulated panels are in development. And what they don't have on here is CLT, so I've actually put in CLT in the expansion stage at the moment. But I don't believe that the traditional life cycle graph is truly representative of how we develop our timber products. They don't have to go like this. They don't have to go into decline. So as we evolve our products, they can continue on growing. And I think that's happening in New Zealand at the moment. And so I decided to invent my own graph, and here it is. So in decline, I've got concrete multi-storied frames. And I actually think that's pretty relevant. If you look at what's happened after the Christchurch earthquakes and the awareness of how these products perform, and I know I'm biased, but I actually think that that's in decline. And the figures would show that as well. Concrete floors, slab on grade, you know, they're subject to cracking and heaving. They're becoming expensive to build. So I see that as maturity. Timber prefab frames, that's a mature industry, frame and truss. Steel multi-storied frames, that's also very mature. But in the expansion or growth stage, we've got mass timber component customisation. And that's really what people like Owen have been doing during his career. They've been taking mass timber, they've been machining it and turning it into components. But we've also got new players like Nelson Pine with their CNC machine, fabricating CNC. And so all of a sudden, all of these products are available to us as engineers. Timber panelisation is becoming more prevalent. Mass timber buildings, I believe, are just entering a growth stage. As I was saying earlier, I mean, we've got more and more opportunity or examples of good mass timber buildings, as well as that damage avoidance design technology has been developed as well. And we're incorporating that as engineers into our design philosophy. So after an event, we can still use that building without having to tear it down and replace it. I've also included things such as building pods. We're seeing more building pods being introduced into our society. A lot of those are imported from overseas in a built stage. And I've included hybrid material structures because I believe the best solution, the best outcome for developers is actually building out of all materials. So all materials have their advantages, and I believe the best solutions will come from hybrid material structures, of which timber certainly has its place. And the purpose of this graph is that to consolidate each of these systems, we need to write about it. And that's where the design guides come into play. By writing about it and standardising our systems, we actually take these systems and we make them mature. So what are the timber design guides? They are to provide a one-stop shop for timber design guides that will enhance the uptake of timber components. I believe it's going to be a 3 to 4 year project, and the cost up to $1.5 million. We've got enough funding at the moment for 10 design guides, which is the original brief, but we've got a bigger dream than that. We want to produce 54 of these guides to make it the one-stop shop. We want to take the existing literature, we want to update it, we want to take what Australia's done and reinvent that for New Zealand, and we also want to develop the guides that we need as our industry to take it forward. So here's our roadmap. We met early on and we decided that this was the appropriate platform to develop. There's 13 chapters and 54 sub-chapters, and these are broken up so they can be added to and updated as we move forward to be a continuous project. So this, I don't want this to end in 3 years, I want it to continue on. So progress to date, steering committee has been appointed, we've signed up some authors, and we've got working groups supporting those authors as sort of peer reviewers of the documents to give them credibility. Funding, we've got funding for over 5 design guides at the moment, pending to get to 10, and obviously we want more to get that full suite of documents. And the first 5 design guides are underway. So the quantity surveying guide is being written by Linda Lodetti. The standard connection details is by Dave King. Prefabrication guidance for specifiers is by Johan Betts. Cassette panels for floors, roofs and walls is Gavin Robinson. And fire safety design and timber buildings is by Andy Buchanan. And Andy Buchanan has already submitted his draft so we can publish it. So thank you very much. Promotional pathways are being formed. So what is really important about this project is not that we just develop that content, but also we disseminate it. So after we've developed it, we're going to go to conferences and we're going to educate people about these design guides. It's going to be available on a website for free download, so you can upload it, or you can also get a hard copy for paying for the printing. Our next steps. We're going to develop a guide for post and beam commercial buildings. We're going to do a design guide for why timber buildings work well in earthquakes. We're going to talk about the design of multi-residential using timber systems, and this is going to be in conjunction with brands and some of the work that they're doing. We've got acoustical detailing for internal and external noise and timber structures, and there's also construction guidance for massive timber buildings. So it's really a trans-industry approach, and so we're appealing not only to specifiers but also construction companies. And we're also going to seek additional funding. So I believe timber can take its place as a co-inhabitants with steel and concrete. This is my final slide, so thank you very much for listening to me, and enjoy your evening. Cheers.